We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, JASON VALLOTTON. Hey, BraveCo men, welcome back. This week's podcast, I have my most special, second most special guest here.
Who's the first?
My wife. When my wife's on here, she's the top.
Special. Yeah, that has to be true.
This is my daughter-in-law, Allie. You've been on here before, so if you men actually are really loyal and frequent our podcast, you would know that.
Yes, exactly.
And they can go back and listen to the previous podcast. But we're going to do some Q&A. We have quite a bit of people that ask us questions, and sometimes we get back to them right away. Sometimes we don't, but we save them up for these Q&As. And so it's one of my favorite things to do is to really help people right where they're at. And so we have an opportunity to do that. And there's nobody better than you to actually talk through and do these questions with.
Yes,
so
I ask good questions.
You do, and you're just so fun to do this with. So thank you so much for coming.
I'm excited to be here. It is always a blast. I feel like I'm this sort of like special little peek in a man's world. So it's fun.
It's true. And I think I always like to bring you in too, because you're a great example of, guys, if you live your life well, you can marry a woman like Allie. Can't marry Allie because she's my daughter-in-law.
Yeah, that'd be
But you can marry a woman like Allie, and then you'd be very blessed.
Oh, thanks, Jay.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to jump in. You have a slew of questions.
I do. Who knows how far we'll get? We'll probably do like 3 and then joke the whole time.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, I'm going to just jump in.
Do it, yeah.
And you can take it away.
Don't ask me any dumb questions though, right?
No, only...
They always say like there's no dumb questions, but we all know there's a couple.
I know. Go ask the person not here.
Yeah.
Those dumb questions. Okay. First question. This is so real. I mean, man, how do I deal with disappointment? Everyone has walked through disappointment. Yeah.
To me, it's like you can't pretend that you're not disappointed. So let's just start there. Because if you like some guys try to just pretend like it didn't happen. And the problem with that is you're just really suppressing your emotions. You're really just shutting off what's really going on inside of you. You don't want to talk about it, but that just makes it worse. The best thing you could do is face it head on. So, wow, I'm really disappointed. Start just by saying, wow, I feel really disappointed right now.
Yeah.
Because you need to just fully be able to, as you begin to verbally process any emotion, your emotions have a life cycle. And that's what people don't know. Like if you don't actually uncork it, then you're not allowing that emotion to literally work through itself. But when you begin to express your emotion, like little kids, for instance, if Edie's really frustrated, the more I try to suppress that frustration, the more it grows. And you can see that, like, just go play, just be quiet. No, you're not supposed to act like that. If I actually say, Edie, you seem really frustrated. What's going on?
Wow.
And she begins to talk about it. I mean, this is science, right? She's begun to open it up and she's processing. Now she's processing what she's feeling. She's getting it out. And now she's going on that journey. Same thing with us. So when we go through a major disappointment, we won't stay disappointed forever. There's so many places where we've been disappointed before. But as you talk about it, as you think about it, as you journal through it, you realize like, oh, okay. You get to like, man, this was really hard and it feels so hard because whatever, I messed up, or I thought this was going to come through for me, or it didn't go the way I wanted it to.
Yeah.
And then you come down the other side and you start on that process of like, but my life isn't always going to be this way. You get perspective. And so I think more than anything, when you're in disappointment mode, talk about it, open it up, process it. Because then you can get to the other side. And what's the other side? Like if you process disappointment well, it doesn't keep you from risk later. But if you don't process disappointment well, then oftentimes it keeps you from risking later on because you don't want to feel disappointed.
Yes.
And you begin to reduce your life smaller and smaller and smaller. And I see people do this all the time. You see it in love, right? Like somebody will date a person and they get really hurt in that. It's very disappointing. It's very painful. They don't process through it well. And then they never actually set themselves up for a good relationship.
Yeah.
And that's because, well, if you didn't heal well, if you heal well, then what you learn in that healing process is that you have what it takes to work through disappointment, through failure. And we know that ultimately every success we have has failure attached to it.
Yeah.
And failure is, John Maxwell talks a lot about this, like the success journey is through failure and through assessment and then making adjustments and then trying again. And so it's so important that we learn how to work through disappointment so that we can learn how to be successful.
That's huge. I'm like, I wish somebody told me that.
I wish you would have asked me earlier, you know?
Yeah, I know, for real. No, but I think
it's real.
It's real to even own the fact that you're disappointed is half of the problem, instead of trying to just, remedy it with a million other situations, keep yourself busy, medicate, however.
Yeah.
The fact that you're just, oh man, I'm actually really frustrated. And I remember in that season that I felt that way, I thought this is going to dictate the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't processing it. I wasn't owning it. I remember hearing a message where someone said, oh, disappointment is like a season. Like when you look at the trees, do you think that they're so scared that their leaves are not going to come back in the wintertime? No, they know their leaves are going to come back. I remember it was the first time like, oh my gosh, like that's right. This isn't going to last forever. This isn't going to dictate my life. But it feels like that sometimes if you don't have tools to process it well.
I would say disappointment is the soil of success.
Man.
It is. I mean, there's no way that you can grow a successful marriage, have successful kids, grow a business, anything that you think about doing. When you look at professional sports, right? Look like these guys are the best in the world. The best professional baseball player in the world bats less than 50%, hits less than 50% of the balls that's thrown to him. Yeah. Baseball is a game of managing disappointment because you're going to get up to bat and if you hit 3 out of 10 balls, like you're a good player. You can be paid millions of dollars to hit on a baseball team if you can hit 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
It's all of life is managing disappointment. If you can manage disappointment well, you'll get success in your life.
That's so good. I love that.
It is. Great question, Allie. Golly.
Oh, wow. Disappointment, guys. Who would have known? Okay. Next question. How do I find healthy guys to run with? I have a lot of guys ask me this question. You're like the king of this question. So.
Yeah. So to me, do something with them, like plan something regularly, do something with them. So I think a lot of guys take the passive route. Like you get to know somebody, you have a good time and you're like, they don't know what to do next. To me, so intentionally, I reach out to probably 6 guys every single week that I text every single week. I text them every week. Hey, I'm thinking about you, praying for you. I'm shooting them videos. So every single night I shoot my bow. I'll just give it for instance. Every night I shoot my bow for 20 minutes, minus 1 or 2 nights a week. I've got a group of 5 guys that I text when I go to shoot my bow. Hey guys, what are you up to? Hope you're shooting your bow tonight. I'm just reminding them that they should be shooting their bow too. I'm a good friend, right? Yeah. So, and then I'll shoot like a 40-yard group and I'll be walking up. I'm like, hey, here's my 40-yard group tonight. And they're probably like, oh, whatever, Ahab and Trey, and I'm calling them out now. But often what happens in that group is all those guys feel connected, right? Men don't rally around like coffee. We rally around these things that we do, these challenges that we face. And so what I found is like, if I keep these men looped in on my every week, I have a friend, Chris Lamb, who I work out with 4 days a week. And then our families hang out. So I probably see him. Some weeks I see him 6 days a week. Yeah. And it's like little things. So, hey, our kids are going to go 6 o'clock. It's 6 o'clock at night. We've got an hour before bed. We're going to go for a bike ride. You guys want to come? A lot of people are just like, no, I don't want to inconvenience somebody. I've already seen him twice this week. I'm like, all he could say is no, it doesn't really matter. Right. But what happens is pretty soon you do that consistent enough. And my friend Chris, he when I moved into the neighborhood, he invited me to work out with him. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And then we have just continued to build upon that relationship by being intentional. And so the other thing I would say, and I'm doing a pitch right now, so I'm advertising.
Yeah.
but go through the foundations of masculinity, take our 12-week course and invite someone to do it. So
Yes.
I've done it with my friend group.
Yes.
I've done it one time all the way through with my friend group, and it's been crazy how much you bond. We just did it lunch from 12 to 1:30. Most guys can extend a lunch a little bit for a small season. And now you're forced in a good way and committed to going through this thing that is all laid out for you that you get to actually bond around. And then what's cool is that 6 months has gone by since we went through it. And now my friends decided they wanted to lead it again, invited a whole bunch of us into it again. So although I'm the one that made the content, they're like, Jay, just come be a part. Like we want you to have an opportunity just to be one of the guys in it, not lead it, but let's do life together. And there's 10 of us that again, we'll do Monday nights from 6 to 7:30, hang out. Someone will smoke cigars, we'll cook some meat, and we'll talk about stuff that really matters, and we'll goof around, and we're all going to a shooting school together. Like our friend groups works really hard at making sacrifices and being uncomfortable to have what every man really wants. Somebody in your trench, somebody that's thinking about you, somebody that's willing to invest in you. And you just have to get out of your comfort zone and be really intentional. So the intentional man is the guy that is the most uncomfortable at first, but he's the richest guy at the end of it.
Yeah. I heard you say you text these guys about shooting your bow every night or whatever. So are most of these friends people that have common interest, or you're just like, oh no, I just still text them about shooting my bow?
Almost all of them, right? Because men really bond around, we don't bond so much face to face as we do shoulder to shoulder, accomplishing, running, doing stuff. Yeah. So I think that's why a lot of discipleship models hadn't worked in the past, is like, take a guy out to coffee and talk about what you're struggling through. Most guys don't want to start there, right? They'll do that if you do something that you both naturally connect through. So I always say, like, find guys with your same hobby and rally around the hobby, and that will open up the doors for, doing other things. There's something that happens when you go to a football game with a guy, you play sports with him, you just trust that guy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of how God's wired us. Like, we bond through doing, and then now we want to go deep and actually share what's going on inside of us. Women don't need as much activities in order to want to go deep or really trust. We're wired different.
Yeah.
But for guys, it's like, don't start with, hey, let's go out to coffee or whatever. Start with hey, I love to race cars. You want to come with me? Hey, I love to ride motorcycles. Hey, I mountain bike. You want a mountain bike? Well, I have never really done it before. Cool. I got an extra bike. It'll be fun. You'll crash.
Yeah.
Like we'll get dirty, whatever you got to do.
Totally.
Yeah. So do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, can feel so daunting, yet it's very practical.
So practical.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. Somebody's asked, how much of your journey with your nervous breakdown was spiritual versus mental or emotional?
It's a really great question. And I'm so glad that they asked that, because, most of my life I grew up focusing on the spiritual because that's what we were taught and trained, and that's not bad. And I would say the church is probably 80-20. Most of the church thinks in terms of spiritual, and then kind of touches on the practical. And I don't think that that's all wrong, because there are verses like, we battle not with flesh and blood, but powers and principalities and spirits.
Yeah, right.
But you can't pray yourself into healthy communication. You can't pray yourself into, good parenting. You can't pray yourself into connection with your wife.
Yes.
You have to learn all those skills you have to do, right? I can't pray myself into good hunting opportunities. I have to go do it. I can't pray myself into fitness. And people have tried that in church, like praying that the calories would be lost out of a burger. It's like, y'all are just lazy, quit eating that bread, get off the gluten train. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But so a lot of where I started was, oh man, what I'm struggling with is fear. What I'm struggling with is anxiety. What I'm struggling with is the enemy, the demonic. And although that was part of it, what I actually struggled with, two things. One, some trauma from my childhood, and not trauma from my parents.
Yeah.
Some trauma from my childhood. And I've shared that before, maybe on the Dates, Mates, and Babies podcast that my wife and I do. Oh, another shout out. where I talked about, I can't even remember which podcast it was, but where I was talking about trauma in my early childhood, where a guy tried to run us off the road for an hour at a time. And it was just crazy. But then also I struggle with OCD, and that's real. Like some people say, I struggle with OCD to be cool or whatever,
Right.
Cause they couldn't pay attention in class. Like I actually struggle with OCD in a way that causes me massive amounts of anxiety that I didn't figure out till I was 38 years old, through a friend who's a clinical psychologist. And so what my OCD does is basically my brain gets fixated on something, like it could be something random, like, oh, what happens if I have to pee today? And what happens if I have to pee a lot today? And some guys will be like, oh, that's so dumb. It's only so dumb to you because you don't struggle with OCD, right? So I'd get fixated on it, and my brain would just spiral into these fear loops. And it was as if it's rumination. So I had a very hard time stopping it because I didn't understand what was wrong.
Yep.
And so I just started to fight the spiritual side of that, right? But the more you fight it, the more you're feeding the OCD. And so this OCD is it's like when your record is skipping, if people remember back to their parents' record players, and it would start skipping and skipping and skipping and skipping. Well, my brain does that. And what you have to do is you have to relabel, refocus, and then go on with your day. And so I didn't know that. So I had spent so much time in a season of my life where I had come out of my divorce and into working out a lot, worked through lots of pain. I was a single dad. So I'd done like 3 years of really intense emotional work. And then I was working out one day and my muscles started twitching really bad, they were just tired. It's part of what happens when your muscles get tired. And I started to get afraid. I started to go like, oh, what's wrong with me? Something's wrong with me. I don't know what's wrong. And I literally wore myself out for months with my muscles are twitching. Well, stress also, it's not only fatigue, but then stress, right?
Actually
so I did those two physical things. Yeah. And then once that happened, real physical stuff started to happen. So anyways, my nervous breakdown was a result of my mental breakdown and my OCD. I didn't actually know what was happening. So now that I have the tools on this, here's the honest truth. Oh, well, and once I got so overwhelmed and so afraid and so tired, then the spiritual kicked in crazy.
Really?
And I've told this story before, but like I'd wake up at night and see a demon, like not I see a demon in my mind or not sense, like actually my eyes are open. It's in front of me. My first reaction is to kick it. Not because I'm brave. I was terrified. Yeah. And I broke my toenail on my dresser. Bam.
I have not heard this story.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I had a roommate at that time. And he goes, bro, you okay? I was like, holy crap. Yeah. But so it's like the spiritual and the physical are so connected. Yeah. That a lot of times you can't have one without the other. Yeah. And so, man, they just worked me so hard. And, knowing what I know now today, though, like I'm off all of my medication that I had to get on to get out of that season,
right?
Simply because I didn't know how to manage my OCD. Yeah. And so now, because I know how to manage my OCD, it's almost not a factor in my life. And I do it almost now unconsciously or subconsciously, but I've really had to work to manage that part of my life.
Yeah. Somebody asked a question about OCD. It says,
can I one sec too?
Oh, sorry.
Did I just remember? No, you were good. I also was deathly deficient in vitamin D. So those two things played a real factor. When I went in and got tested, because they didn't know what was going on. So I had cancer tests, rheumatoid arthritis tests, and MS tests. And they found that I was so deficient in vitamin D. So that's also what happens. My physical body got so low. Like vitamin D is one of the hormones that you have to have or your body won't function anymore.
Right. It functions like a hormone, doesn't it?
Yeah. And so I was taking 100,000 IUs several times a week just to get up to, and like a normal dose, like if you go and buy vitamin D at the store, like a normal dose is 2,000 IUs. I was taking 100,000 IUs several times a week just to get back up to normal. So there you go.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. This person's asked a question about OCD. They said, I have intense OCD themes and the body's response to OCD. How can I break fear and ritual cycles? So you shared a little bit, but maybe you could go a little bit more in depth about how you have learned to cope and manage those fear cycles.
Yeah. So here's what I would tell them though. I would say that they should invest, and I use that word on purpose.
Yeah.
And invest in seeing a clinical psychologist who specializes in OCD, because they will literally tailor make a plan to help you figure out how to work through it. Right. Yeah. And I would say use my testimony as fuel to know that it's going to pay off.
Good.
So, cause a lot of people look at that and they go like, man, that's $350 an appointment. It's like, yeah, but you're not going to do that forever. You're going to do that for 6 months. Right. So you're going to invest $3,000 into like changing the way that you think. Massively worth it. So for me, there's 3 steps if you're struggling with OCD that are very crucial, and they're 3 R's. So you first have to recognize, then you have to relabel, and then refocus. And the better you get at these 3 R's, the much better you'll be able to manage this area of your life. And so basically what happens is, again, people get fixated on, it could be germs, right? Like, oh my gosh, they get so fixated and so afraid of this phobia. Right, like there's germs everywhere. And if I touch this, then I have to and constantly thinking through, like I touch this person's hand and I wonder where they were. And there's this hyper fear. And so if you understand that, that's just your brain getting stuck. All of human beings have the same type of thoughts that go through their head, but they don't often get stuck for everyone. And so you may in your brain, you may go like, wow, I touched this person's hand. I wonder if it's clean. And then your brain just goes, it's not that big of a deal. Like I've touched thousands of hands before, and you just keep on going with your day. Right. Well, somebody that really struggles with OCD, their brain gets stuck on that, and then they dive deep, and then it just bores this deep hole of it's unending. And so instead of fighting it, the first thing that you need to do, and there's this phrase that people who struggle with OCD are given, it's not me, it's OCD, right? So if you start to understand this isn't actually even me, it's not necessarily even rational. This is just what OCD does. And so I literally treat it like it's another person.
Yeah.
Like it may be the devil, it may be somebody else's thoughts. It's OCD. Like it's this thing out here that I don't have to put a bunch of time, effort, and energy. I don't have to try to solve it. I don't have to figure out the algorithm. I don't even have to pay a bunch of attention to. So I've recognized that what's happening in me is I've started this OCD spiral. Great. And now I'm relabeling it. That's not me. This isn't for me to solve, because there are things in life that we do have to solve. A train's coming at me. I feel a lot of anxiety.
Right.
I should probably get off the tracks.
Totally.
But OCD will make you feel like a train's coming at you when you're standing in the middle of the forest. You're like, oh my gosh, what if this crazy thing happens and you can just spiral through life like that? And so, that's OCD right there. And now I need to relabel. That's not me, that's OCD. And now what I need to do is I need to refocus. So part of what happens is your brain is stuck in that loop and it's looping. And so the science shows us that if you can refocus your mind, your attention, your energy for a short period of time, it's not even long periods. It's like, 1, 2, 3 minutes. If you can refocus your time, your brain can't do 2 things consciously at once.
Wow.
And so you can't sit here and write a thesis and think about how you're going to cook dinner tonight. You can't do it. It's impossible to do. You can do one or the other, but you can't do both. And so your brain, it gives your brain a chance to get out of this groove and to reset into this one. And so there's so many different techniques to resetting. Like one of them that my psychologist gave me was reading a book backwards.
Holy.
You know how hard it is to read a book backwards? Start at the last page, start at the bottom, and read it backwards. Oh my God. It takes so much effort and energy. You're not thinking about this thing over here, right?
Right.
And so if you can get your brain to reset, then it's not skipping anymore. Now you can go on with your day. If I put you on a jet ski, which you and your husband have jet skis, and I hit go, and you're zipping across the lake. Like you're not thinking, I wonder what bills I have to pay. I wonder if my extended warranty is still good on my car. Or like you're not thinking about those things. All you're thinking about is, I better freaking hold on. I better pay attention to what I'm doing. Oh my gosh, this is so fun. And now your brain's in a different groove. Okay. So for me, this is the most important thing. Don't fight the OCD. Don't try to solve that battle. Don't try to read a million scriptures to like get the truth in, to hold on to it so you don't lose and forget who you are. Right. That's the battle. That's the OCD battle. What you want to do is just refocus. So what I did, and this is going to sound so biblical, and if you know me, you know that I'm not like hyper spiritual. I don't walk around whatever, talking about all the stuff all day. I just found that this worked the best.
Totally.
I would get into crazy thankfulness. And when I say thankfulness, like I would start to spiral. I'm walking through Costco. I had this fear that comes in. It literally affects my body. So I have a physical manifestation. I have starting to sweat. I can feel anxiety. I can feel it in my back. So that's where I feel it the most usually. And then I recognize, I just had a thought in my brain that is triggered from my OCD. Okay, that's not me. That's OCD. I don't have to figure out what it is. I don't even have to hunt it down. Now I'm going to switch straight into crazy thankfulness and refocus. So I go straight into like, I'm so thankful that my wife right now gets to be in Chico and she's having an incredible time. And then when she comes back at 4, she gets to go get a facial, which was a gift given by you guys, which means our family is so blessed because you guys care so much about Lauren that you would bless her with that gift that is really making a difference in her life right now. And I'm so thankful that I have a babysitter that our kids love that can take care of the kid. Like I can just get straight into like the details, the fine details until it starts to lift. And what happens is when the anxiety starts to lift, the more times you do that, the more confidence you build. Wow. And confidence is the key to breaking those cycles in your life, because the more confidence you build, the less fear you get that you're going to be under it.
Right.
And that's the key. So a lot of people who struggle with a panic attack, for instance, and then they get out of it, but they don't know how to get out of it. You're always afraid that you're going to get back into it.
Yeah.
The best thing that could happen is that you struggle with that, right?
Yeah.
And then you work through one, and then you realize, I can do these steps that help me to climb out. Now it's going to happen again. You're going to come to a point where, I get overwhelmed. And then as soon as you remember like, I can do these steps, now pretty soon, like that, what used to be a panic attack now is just a thought that hits you and you go like, I could just do these steps and I'd be out of it. Wow. Now what happens to me is I get the same thought that I used to have, but it almost doesn't even faze me because I know like, well, all I'd have to do is do this thing. And like I've spent 3 years, 4 years of my life working through on different levels of what used to crash me. And I just have so much confidence in this area that I'm like, so now I know if I don't sleep well, it's like, I'm feeling this way because I didn't sleep well, not because something's wrong with me. I'm not even going to go down this path. So that honestly, that's the key.
Like you rebuild trust with yourself.
So much trust.
Yeah. Like it's one thing to not trust somebody else, but to be in your own self and not be able to trust.
I didn't even understand myself till 38. I didn't understand what was happening in me.
And the reality is so many people walk around like that.
It's really hard to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super hard.
It's huge. Okay. Taking it a slightly different direction. Somebody's asked, should I not pursue a career that takes me away from my family? I'm a single dad. It's a tricky question.
Not necessarily. You can argue that every career takes you away from your family.
Yeah, to some degree.
Yeah. So it's really hard to know, like without really knowing, like, what is that career? I think that there are different seasons in life that we go through. And if you're a single dad, and also we don't know how old his kids are, if his old kids are 16, 17, 18, it's like, well, maybe they don't need you as much as when they need you at 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
So
different capacity.
If your kids are really young, then the early years of raising kids are so important because they're being imprinted upon, right? You have all the bonding that happens the early years. And if children don't bond well, they don't do life well. period.
Right.
It takes so much work if kids didn't bond well to their parents, because that is the foundation for confidence. It's a foundation for identity. It's the foundation for coping skills. It's a foundation for them to learn how to soothe. Kids don't know how to soothe. So you have to teach them how to soothe. You have to soothe them. So it's like, if you're gone in those bonding years, and you're actually gone, you're gone a lot, let's say that you're gone for days on end, then that's going to be really hard, because your kids are literally imprinting on somebody else, that a babysitter's not going to bond to them like they're meant to bond to you, and not soothe them like they're meant to be soothed by you. So you're going to need to make the sacrifice there. Yeah. So just a consistent job would be better than a career if they're really young. But at some point, we're all exchanging, it's this massive exchange. Like, I'm busier right now than I was 5 years ago. And it's an exchange. Like, I'm constantly managing with Lauren, how much time can I be away? And then how present can I be when I'm home?
Yeah.
So that's the other side of it that I would say for all men, making this applicable to men. Because I know men that are in a career, but they're home, but they're not present.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter.
Right. It's almost more painful.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It really is almost more painful. And so to me, the key is like, how do you be present when you are really home? How do you build team with your wife when you're home? How do you build consistency with your kids? Something that they can count on when you're home, so that, so that's massive. So I mean, let's just assume that the kids are fairly young. I would say like, hey, what's a good alternative? Like, maybe he can build a skill set so that as they get older, he can step into that career and make up for the time lost, right?
Great advice.
While he's building, just a normal, stable job right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, being home when the kids are younger would be massively critical.
That's great. Okay. I'm going to read a scenario that somebody has sent in, a personal scenario.
Ooh.
Hey, Jason, current situation in my life is my girlfriend and I broke up after dating for almost 2 years because of an action I did. Both of us are getting individual coaching to heal the underlying pain and trauma we have had from even before dating. We care about each other deeply, but are in a wilderness season. My question is, as I circle back to, is I want to work things out with her, but I don't know if she ever will. Any advice on this would be great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's great. So many thoughts on it. My first thought is, the first mission is to make sure that you get yourself well, because you want to get well.
Yeah.
And if you remember that there's not one person in this world that's going to make you happy. There's not one person that's going to be everything that you need. There's not one person that's just going to, there's lots of people.
Yeah.
And so if you also, my one caution that I feel is, sometimes when we when we make a mistake with a person, we blow it to them, like in a relationship, we want to get back with them because we feel the shame of messing it up.
We want to prove something.
Yeah. And we want to clean it up.
Yeah.
And my thing would be like, hey, make sure that you're not wanting to be with her because you feel the shame of messing it up. And now you have to fix this thing. Right.
That's a good point.
So to me, start from the place of, okay, if I get whole and healthy.
Yeah.
And really learn what caused me to make that mistake. Maybe it was cheating on her.
Yeah.
Maybe it was pornography, whatever. And I actually learn and understand what caused me to get there with her. And I solve that problem in my life. Well, it doesn't matter what relationship I go into next, because that's not going to be a downfall, a mark against me. It's actually going to be confidence for the next relationship that I get into. And I would say, don't hide that, right? Because like, what you want to do is, anytime you weaponize a weak area in your life, it used to be really weak.
Yes.
You struggled with it for a long time, but now you've overcome it, and you have the track record to prove that you overcome it. And not just you overcome it because you can gut it out, but you overcome it because you understand how you got to where you're at and you solve the problem. Now I can explain that. And what people don't understand often is that trust is not built by the absence of mistakes, but by how we clean up a mess. And we see this in industry. So for instance, like my iPhone, if I have a phone that I use from a company and this product breaks, studies show us that if I call this company and I say, hey, I had a failure with your product, and they take really good care of me, I am more loyal to that company than if I'd never had a problem.
Yeah.
Because innately as humans, we all know that stuff's going to break, but we don't know if we're going to be taken care of. And if I have a company that I know will take care of me, okay, I'm willing to move forward, because trust isn't built by something not going wrong. Trust is built by I have somebody that's willing to work, willing to clean up, willing to own. And that's what we're looking for in relationships, right? Like I'm looking for someone in a relationship that can take ownership, that can explain to me how they got there, that can, not repeat the same mistake, but they're going to fail again. Are they going to take ownership? And so I would say, man, when you can do that, when you can explain to either your ex-girlfriend or another woman that you're going to meet someday in the future with confidence, how they know that, and how you know that you're in a great spot, that you're a good man, that you're a good catch, that you've got confidence. That's the time to, and if she wants to be with you, great. If she doesn't, then you don't want her.
Right. Yeah.
Because, if she can't get over your failure, which I'm not saying she should, I'm not saying like shame on you. Like you may have went and slept with 6 girls and like that may be something that she just can't, she needs to move on. That's fine. It's not a slight on her, but you don't want to talk her into something that she is unwilling to move past.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's a lot of people that, anyways.
That's really good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
That's what I'd say.
Okay. I think we have time for a few more questions.
Okay.
I listened to Applying Forgiveness to Your Life, which I'm assuming is a podcast episode.
Yeah.
And loved it. That was a super huge paradigm shift. Felt a little called out even by the ineffective ways you mentioned. I had a follow-up question though. Do you have anything to add on the processing pain caused by a person that you are in a relationship with? Or that you're currently in a relationship with?
I mean, I've got tons to add.
Lots. Lots to say about pain.
And I don't know all of what I taught, I didn't just get done teaching it, but, and I do know that teaching well. Here's the thing. In every relationship that you're in, almost every marriage that you're in, every partnership that you're in, you're going to go through painful points. Yeah. Every week. Yeah. I mean, I can't even think of a week where Lauren doesn't do something or say something. Yeah. And I'm like, gosh, that was tough.
Yeah.
Ouch. Frustration. My main thing now is develop a relationship that can handle the truth and develop a skill set that can deliver a truth in a way that's beneficial. Those two things are wildly important, right? Yeah. Because if you hurt me and I convey my pain in a way that just throws more hurt on you, then I've done nothing better than you. I'm hurting our relationship because you hurt me. But if you hurt me and I go, ooh, ow, I feel a lot of shame when you say that. Or, hey, babe, I feel a lot of pain when you communicate that to me. Well, it sets her up for going, ooh, tell me about your pain. Or it sets us up for success. So I think part of it is when people don't have good communication skills and ways of expressing their emotions and their disappointment and their pain, and then really good conflict resolution skills, it's just one slippery mess after another, because you have to be perfect in order to be me to be fine. And I have to be perfect in order for you to be fine. Otherwise we use our really crappy communication tools and the real key, because you don't want to be in a marriage that doesn't have conflict. If you're in a marriage that doesn't have conflict, you're not going deep.
No.
You're not talking about real things.
Right.
You're not emotionally connecting. Totally. And that's just real. Yeah. So when people brag about like, we never argue, I'm like, you just don't hear the truth from that person.
That's scary.
Yeah, it is. And so to me, it's like, no, we want to be intentional, put in the time, the effort, the energy to really learn those skills, those arts, the tools of how to communicate. And that can be, there's lots of different ways to do that. You can go on Dates, Mates, and Babies. There's another shout out to Lauren and my podcast where we teach that stuff. You can take one of our marriage intensives that will come out in September. You can go to the connection codes and learn how to communicate emotions. You can take BraveCo and learn how to communicate emotions. You can read the boundaries book. You can take the boundaries courses. You can, I mean, there's like 9 billion ways to do it.
It's actually doing something about it.
It's doing something.
Yeah.
So to pinpoint a little bit closer, a little bit more to his question, if you're currently in pain because of something that your spouse or partner caused you, you need to make sure that you go through the steps to really process the pain. But then what will be helpful, because you can go through those 6 steps of processing pain and it still won't solve the issue with her. It will solve the issue inside of you.
Yes.
But if you don't learn how to communicate with her, what was painful, what was challenging, what your needs are, then you're going to be afraid of her.
Yeah.
Because how is she going to do that again? Yes, she's going to do that again.
Well, and she'll never know how to do it differently. Like this is just the reality of marriage. I'm like, I think about for myself, it's so refining.
Yeah.
But the moments that excite me are when Elijah comes and is able to communicate where I've hurt him, but actually has the ability to tell me what he needs on the opposite side of that. Because I'm able to lean in and go, oh my gosh, I never intended for that to hurt you. I'm feeling this way. That's why I acted that way. But now you've told me what you need. And so now it's my choice. And it might actually take some effort because I've been really used to communicating or doing this thing. But now I have a tool. Now I have a way to not do it that way. Yeah. So that's huge.
Yeah. A lot of people's communication skills are atrophied. It looks as if they're not muscles that they have used before. They're still using the same tools that they used in high school, using the same tools they grew up with. Yeah. And honestly, for most people, it doesn't serve them very well. Yeah. And so it's intentionality. It's doing the same thing I do with my physical body. It's working out 3 or 4 or 5 days a week on those skills. It's doing it with your girlfriend or your spouse. It's being intentional. It's underlining. It's learning. It's practicing. It's failing. It's taking ownership and doing it again. Yeah. And so, I told my daughter this morning, she's 3. I said, Edie, anytime you learn a skill in your life, you get to keep that for the rest of your life. Yeah. If you learn how to make bread, if you learn how to plant flowers, if you learn how to garden, that's what you want to pour your time, effort, and energy into because you have it for the rest of your life. You can upgrade your life. This is what I tell men all the time. And now I'm getting on a tangent, but if you learn how to fish, you have that skill the rest of your life. Yeah. If you learn how to shoot guns, you have it the rest of your life. You can hand it down, you can pass it on.
Yeah, nobody can take it from you.
Communication's the same way. You're going to talk for the rest of your life. Yeah. And the depth of your relationships, the depth of joy and gratitude and effectiveness in your relationships comes down to your ability to manage and communicate and interact. And man, if we shouldn't put so much time every week into learning that and becoming an expert at it, I don't know what else is more important.
It's really good. Really, really good.
Last question.
Oof. We're on the same page. Okay, last one. I love this one. As a woman, is it unhealthy for me to expect my partner to be able to meet my emotional needs the same way my female friends do? I've been told that men will just never be able to fill that need for me, but it's hard for me to accept that I won't find a man to meet me with the same level of emotional intelligence and tension that I receive from my girlfriends. How to throw a woman's question in there.
Yeah, I love that. Women and men are so different. And we interact way different. Totally. Our first response is different. My wife's first response is an emotional response. It's going to be almost always like oh wow, tell me about that. My first response is, oh wow, how can I fix that?
So real. Oh my God.
I either want to fix it or I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah. Like, no,
what are we doing about that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hers is, let's explore all of that. And so I think that you shouldn't expect a woman to be a man or a man to be a woman. At the same time, what you should have in all of your relationships that are really deeply meaningful to you is a strong emotional connection.
Yes. Yeah.
or you're going to be really dissatisfied. And so I would say you don't want a man to connect to you emotionally like your girlfriends do, because your girlfriends are going to do something for you that only your girlfriends do.
Yeah.
But you want your man to connect deeply and emotionally with you. And so that's going to feel different. It's going to be different. And it's not apples and apples because your girlfriends aren't sleeping with you. They're not picking up your clothes. They're not going to work every day. They're not doing all that stuff. So, we often have unrealistic expectations for our lifelong partners. And I say partners because it could be a husband or wife, because we're comparing it to our friend group that doesn't have to put up with our stuff all day.
Right.
And that's real. That just adds a dynamic.
Yeah.
And so the other side too is I emotionally recharge so different than my wife. Like Lauren wants to sit down and talk with her friends deep. That's what she does to really connect and to have fun. That's not what I do. And so if she compares me to her girlfriends and goes like, well, Michelle and I could talk for an hour and a half about this one thing. And I'm like, well, congratulations.
I don't want to do that.
There's no one that knows Lauren like I know her.
Yeah.
There just isn't. And so as a man and as her husband, I've spent time being intentional to really know her. And then I spend time intentionally to emotionally connect to her on a regular basis. And that's real. That's not just hype. So I've set alarms on my phone. I have worked on it. It's not something that just comes natural to me because I don't naturally do that. That's why the Bible says, husbands, nourish and cherish your wife. Notice that it doesn't tell wives to nourish and cherish their husbands. It says, husbands, respect your wives. So a woman, you don't have to tell, hey, nourish and cherish. She already does that naturally. That's her natural response.
Yeah.
Is nourish and cherish. I mean, you do that for other kids. It's just how they connect. For men, you have to tell a man. Nourish. Do what the wife does. Do that intentionally for her. Nourish and cherish her. Like, I don't want my wife to nourish and cherish me like she does her girlfriends. That's not how I feel cared for by her. Yeah. I want to emotionally connect, but I want my wife to respect me. Yeah. And so I do think that, again, I know I'm a little long-winded today.
I love it. It's great.
But the important thing is it's not apples and apples. And so I'm not comparing on that stage. What I am doing is I need to build a bond. I need relationships that are bonded, are satisfying, they're the most, deepest gratifying relationships that you can have. So I need a husband. I need a man that's willing to grow and learn, to understand me, to express his emotions, to set healthy boundaries with me. But it's not going to feel like what a woman feels like.
Yeah.
It's going to feel different.
Right.
So
that's so good.
Oof.
Wow. Thanks for having me.
Al pal.
It was so fun.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
It's a blast.
You're the best. All right, BraveCo men. Hopefully you guys learned something this week, and keep sending in those questions because we like them. They're so much fun.
So fun.
Yeah. Have a great week. See you guys. Hey, BraveCo men. Hopefully you loved this week's episode. Listen, if you have not subscribed to our podcast, you are already behind. Go ahead and click right here to subscribe to our podcast. And if you have not watched last week's episode, you can click right here and watch last week's episode. And listen, if you want to upgrade your wardrobe, you can check out some of our new hats that we have in stock and all our other swag. Go to braveco.org and you can look at our store there. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.